Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of Ben's Learning Lounge. I'm so excited to have you back for episode 2 and I want to thank everyone for the great feedback I've had so far on episode 1. It's really been so heartwarming to see the amount of good feedback I've had from people I know and from people I don't know too. We've surpassed over 100 likes on Facebook already on my page in like just less than 24 hours, which is, it's just absolutely insane. So I want to thank everyone for that. And just a reminder too that this podcast is a fundraiser for Mind. Mind are a great charity which is all about mental health problems, about supporting people who have mental health difficulties or concerns, especially at the moment during lockdown and quarantine. I think there are a lot of people who might be feeling a little bit lonely, especially if they're away from family and friends. So I think it's a great charity to donate to. So if you're interested in donating to them, please go to justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. One more time, that's justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. And thank you to everyone who has donated so far. I've got a great guest today for you. His name is Carlo. He comes from all the way from Peru, and I've known him for the past couple of years. I met him doing a year abroad in Vienna, and he's the most active person I know. And I couldn't think of anyone to talk better about motivation and work ethic than Carlo. So he's a certified nutritional coach. He's the managing director of the Instagram page Billionaire Heaven, which has over 200,000 followers. And he's the CEO of Health Factory Peru, which is a sort of custom diet creation plan company. I'm sure it's going to be helpful for a lot of people because he has some great advice about motivation during the lockdown period, about things you can do, about drive, and about failure and what to do when you sort of encounter failure and how to deal with it in a healthy way. Positivity as well, and I really recommend you stay to the end because he's got some simple but effective tips that you can put into practice that has been sort of the core of Carlo's mindset and success. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Carlo and enjoy the podcast. So here I am with Carlo. Thanks again, Carlo, for saying you'll be a part of the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Ben, for having me. It's a pleasure for me.
Yeah, no worries. So I've known you for a couple of years now, and the main thing I know about you, apart from being like a danceaholic, is that you're a workaholic as well. I think it'd be great for people to get a sort of look inside your mind. Maybe they can get some motivation during this COVID-19 time when everyone's trying to just get out of bed at a human time. So first things first, I want to know a little bit about your motivations and a little bit how you work and, your general approach to life.
Yeah. Well, basically, as far as I can remember, like when I was at school here in Peru, I really wasn't quite a motivated individual. I used to get good grades, but that was about it. But then when I applied for the scholarship to study at the University of Sheffield, which represented my first chance of living abroad, and then when I got to Sheffield and when I got to the UK, and I basically fell in love with the place, and that's when I decided that I really wanted to stay. However, because I had a friend back then that she was from Peru, from my same school, and she didn't manage to stay because of the working permits and all that. That's when my mentality completely shifted towards constantly bettering myself in order to stand out, basically. Because for someone to stay in the UK as a third country national, it's quite hard. And that's basically when I started researching more about how to keep yourself motivated, how to I remember at that time there was once I used to have 5 part-time jobs as well.
Wow, Jesus.
So yeah, I was doing all sort of crazy things just so that I could stay. But I don't regret it at all, despite me not being able to stay, because as I said, it completely changed my mind and my mentality. And that's when I adopted that work hard, play hard mentality as well.
Yeah, that's definitely what I know you for. But there's definitely a gap too between, you said you wanted to stand out in things and you had a part-time job, 5 part-time jobs at nearly one point. But there's obviously a gap between wanting to stand out and then actually enforcing the work ethic. So how did you manage to actually get that ball rolling originally?
Well, I think that the main breaking point, so to speak, was when I broke up with my first girlfriend, and actually then you helped me quite a lot with that because it really tore my heart, I must admit. But I realized at that moment that life is gonna throw all sort of things at you, Even though it's normal to feel grief, it's normal to feel sad, there comes a point in which you realize that feeling sad, it's an election, it's an option, you know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people too who end up in that sort of. You can end up in quite a black hole, can't you, of sadness? I definitely
Yeah,
understand it.
exactly. And I think that in life it's important that you decide what to do with the things that happen in your environment. Like, for instance, if someone has an alcoholic dad, you have two options. Whether you become an alcoholic because your dad was an alcoholic, or you don't become one, you know. You understand the risks of drinking too much, and then you take a different path. And I think that this applies to everything. And I think that that experience allowed me to understand that happiness was also like within you. You know, if you let
Hmm.
happiness, like your personal happiness, depend on things that are in your environment, whether someone praises you, whether you get a good mark, whether you excel at your job, or stuff like that. You know, things that sometimes they don't depend on you, then your happiness will always be dependent on something. You know.
Well, what do you think that the source of your happiness was? Is it just the fact that you got a work ethic, or did you start working on specifically something which was that you knew was good for you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the fact that I really wanted to like stay in the UK kept me motivated for a long while. And they said that it takes like 23 days to establish a habit in your brain. So I think that
Right. Okay.
I just developed a habit out of it. Even though like now, obviously my goal is still to go back to the UK, perhaps do a master's or whatever. I still have like preserved that work ethic. So yeah, I think that was what really like gave me like a kickstart, you know.
So perhaps there a good thing for people to take away is like if there's something that they actually want to engage doing is to really try and engage in that thing for about a month until they start building a habit of it, and then perhaps from then on it just becomes part of their daily routine, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they say it takes 23 days to establish a habit and 90 days to establish a lifestyle. So once you go past that point, you really like your mindset completely changes because you enjoy that process. You know, you don't do it out of need. Yeah.
You've had experience with that because I know just recently you did some sort of 90-day challenge almost, didn't you? And I'm wondering if that established a habit. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, basically, I started a 90-day challenge in which I would like wake up at 5 a.m. every day and eat like clean as well for like 90 days, except for like the occasional cheat day. Yeah, I mean, it has helped me tremendously. I first did it because I started out my company that we basically do meal prep here in Peru. So it was
Hmm.
a way of like also promoting it, you know, discreetly. Uh,
Good
uh,
marketing brain.
yeah, exactly. Because if it works for me, it can work for anyone. That's what I always believe. At the
Hmm.
beginning, I mean, it was hard for me to wake up at 5, even though I was quite used to it before that. Since came back to Peru, I felt that I didn't have the same motivation as before. Because believe it or not, I believe that it was me coming back. At first, I thought it was like a step down, you know?
Yeah.
There were many things that found that didn't change, some things that they bothered me, stuff like that, which it demotivated me a bit. Um, the months leading to me starting the challenge, I really felt that I wasn't the same person, you know, as before. So that's how I started. But like, and I remember that in the first 15 days, I really saw a change, not only physically, because I must admit that I also let myself go. Like, even though
Hmm.
I was going to the gym and everything, I wasn't eating like properly. I was eating like all sort of things, so I put on a lot of weight. But in the first 15 days of me doing the habit, I realized that, oh my God, like I can do this for the rest of my life, really. And I think that the process that, because I was basically recording this whole challenge like on social media, me being accountable to my friends that follow me on Instagram really motivated me as well. But I noticed that by the time I went past the first 30 days, it wasn't about me getting feeling that motivation from them. It was just like an inner fire that I developed. And now I cannot like even during this like quarantine period, this lockdown period, I'm still working out every day and eating clean.
Well, I think that there's a lot of things to unpack there. I think just from doing those 90 days, and it's definitely nothing to play down the fact that you woke up at 5 a.m. every day and had to eat clean every day. And it was brilliant that you did document it because I think it was inspiring for me and other people too. For example, I've been eating healthier, a lot healthier for the past month, and a lot of that was actually because I thought, well, if Carlo's doing it, then I might as well jump on board too, you know. But a lot of it too is down to the fact that you identified the way to build a habit through the 90
Yeah.
days. You also knew that the environment was having an effect on
Mhm.
you, you know, because it can happen, like you said, if you go to somewhere which is where things are kind of maybe more stale in your mind or you don't associate it with a productive mindset, you can easily let yourself go. So you had to make some efforts there to reassociate that environment in your mind. And you took responsibility by making sure that it was a sort of a public display, which I think is all those things are so almost a great recipe to actually manage to get something done.
Yeah, no, like 100%. I think that as you said, like the fact that I had that accountability, it motivated, it gave me that kickstart that I really needed. Because then, like when I was in the process, I realized that, oh wait, okay, I'm here in Peru, I might as well make lemonade with the lemons that I have, you know?
Hmm.
So I feel that it's crazy how like what started as a physical challenge it had repercussions in every aspect of my life, really, on like on my work, my personal relationships and stuff like that. So it's really good. And I recommend it for anyone. It doesn't the goal doesn't have to be like physical. It doesn't have to be like any like if you don't like sports, that's fine, you know. But this is something that can be applied to any person, like as per according to their goal.
Well, that's why I wanted to sort of also bring up that a lot of people who might be listening to this might be thinking about ways that they can potentially better themselves. You know, maybe uh, they know that they're not where they could be, but they don't know where that could be is. How do you think people could potentially better themselves if they don't really know which direction to go down to do that?
I think that the best way to do so is by trying to find what really motivates you. And it has to be like intrinsic motivation. Because if it's something from the
Mm.
environment, it's easily going to change. And then if it changes, then it's going to affect you and only you. But when motivation is intrinsic, it's from within, you're unstoppable basically. You know, so you would really have to identify that little thing that turns on that fire in you.
Hmm. I heard I think it was a Will Smith speech, and he spoke about just really actually sitting down with yourself, maybe in a mirror, and really thinking about what is it inside of you that actually motivates you. Because, I mean, for example, there's no point going on a diet if you don't really want to be on that diet. You're not going to do a great job of it. You know, you have to find that it's something which you're not waking up every day feeling it's horrible to do. You want to actually have that level of motivation there to do it, and it gives you some kind of life doing it. Otherwise, you're just going to probably burn away more, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's like sustainability of a goal. It's crucial. That's I would dare to say that that's the most important part of achieving a goal. It's like for instance those people that they say they eat bad for like 6 months and then in 1 or 2 months they want to eat only like 1,000 calories a day
Yes.
in order to like to offset the period in which they were eating right. But they can do that for like 2 or 3 weeks. But then after a while, it takes its toll on you, you know, and it's no longer sustainable. Like imagine living on 1,000 calories every day. It's like it's almost impossible. Like you don't have energy for anything. You feel down and stuff like that. And this applies in life as well. You know, you need to find something that is sustainable, and that's why I strongly believe that the most important thing when you set yourself a goal is to take action, you know? Set yourself a
Yeah.
goal in which it's easy to take action for. Like, there's I believe it's a Navy SEALs that they say that he says that the first thing you should do, like the moment you wake up, is like do your bed, is make your bed, because it will give you a small sense of achievement that will motivate you to start doing the next task and so on, you know. And I think that this is
Brilliant.
something that a lot of people, especially during this lockdown time, is experiencing, you know. Like you wake up at 12, 1 p.m. you don't feel like doing anything, then you like lay on your bed and you procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate. So you never go, and you basically get into a repetitive cycle, in which
Yes.
in which you feel down because you didn't get any sense of achievement. For instance, there are many teams in football that what they do, and this is why I wanted to highlight that I think that momentum is super important in life. Many
Hmm.
teams in football, for instance, when they do the preseason, they play against worse teams so that they get their like self-esteem up, so that when they have to face the real teams in the season. So I think that this is a concept that applies in life too. That you have to do like even like the most menial stuff, the most menial tasks that will set you in a way that will shift your mentality towards a winning mentality, and that will motivate you to start doing something else.
Yeah, yeah, and I think on that point too. I mean, I was having a podcast the other day. I don't know which order these are going to be released in, but about well-being. And one of the things we talk about well-being and mental health is sort of that there's a lot of great motivation out there for people who potentially are in a sort of difficult place, that to give themselves those little achievements. Maybe they brushed their teeth that day, or they went to the shop that day. Those kind of things pick you up to the point where you kind of build up, like you said, that momentum that then glides you forward into the future. I mean, if you start beating yourself up at the start, there's no way you're going to get across that start line, because you're just not going to feel like you got it in you.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
any good advice there for people would be to, before you start anything, is to try and build yourself up to know that you can do it and that you're actually a great person who could potentially achieve a lot in life. It's that optimistic look that I've noticed that you've got, and it's quite contagious too.
Oh, thank you very much for saying that. And also, what I would like to for people to really understand is just take action. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing. Just take action, because I myself used to be, and even sometimes I am a contemplator. I try to contemplate everything. I wait for the stars to align in order to start doing something. But because you want everything to fall in place, just so that you can start doing like a certain activity. But you have to realize that life is not like that, because there are things that are going to escape out of your control. And if you wait for like everything to fall in place, which most of the times it doesn't never like that does never happen. Uh, then you're missing out, because you're gonna be postponing it.
Yeah, and just the perfect thing I can relate to that. And again, I know I'm going back to it, but just because it's such a great example, but diets are a perfect thing because a lot of the time people do say, oh, well, I would start a diet now, but I've got a wedding, for example, next week, or, I've got a party coming up, or, I've whatever's coming or whatever's happening. You just never end up starting it. Monday never comes in those sort of situations.
Yeah, exactly. Like some people, even myself, I remember like because I used to be really, really, really chubby when I was back in school, and I would always say on like Thursday on a Friday, okay, I'll start my diet next month. And then
Yeah.
if for some reason on Monday I wouldn't start, then I would postpone it till next Monday, and it's just a never-ending cycle, really. It really is.
Another area I actually wanted to tackle. Again, you're someone who manages to keep themselves motivated, and you do manage to do quite a lot. I want to go a bit more into your part-time job soon, but I want to know if there's any sort of difficulties that someone with such a mindset can have that might be novel to people with that mindset. Is there a certain hindrance of wanting to always improve yourself that people might not necessarily be aware of?
I think that it's the fact that you will constantly battle with yourself.
Hmm.
uh, in my case, but that also denotes the fact, if you constantly battle with yourself, that denotes the fact that you're also getting to know yourself, and that's something that I've realized that living abroad at such a young age really helped me with, because when you start setting goals, when you start tackling them, when you start being more accountable with your own self, you like indirectly you start getting to know yourself as well. So, but at the same time, it's not all like sunshine and rainbows when that happens, because there will be times that you feel that your own self is bringing you down,
Hmm.
and it really is just a mental battle. The only person that can overcome that is you and only you.
Yeah, and also not to feel guilty, I suppose, when you know that there are certain days when you just do not feel it. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw a video of Sylvester Stallone, it was, not too long ago, and obviously, he's quite a buff guy, and he said, he did a video, and he said, today, I just cannot, cannot be bothered to go into the gym. He still went in, God bless him, and he did a tiny workout because he felt ill. But it was that sort of, I think, that aspect of not beating yourself up sometimes when you feel that you can't do it, or it might even be detrimental to yourself to do it, especially because of things like burnout, which is such a common thing amongst people, especially people who push themselves,
Yeah.
is to, know where your limits are, about how far you're pushing yourself, and to know when to sort of hold yourself back in certain circumstances and just review where you're at and know that you're doing a great job.
Yeah, exactly. And that also, like, in order to avoid burnout, you also have to get to know yourself, But it's just a constant, like, life journey. The first action that one has to take is to acknowledge it. Once you acknowledge it, you can set the steps that you need to fulfill in order to achieve it. And it's not a race; it's a marathon, really. There are always gonna be good
It
days
is,
and bad
yeah.
days, and good days and bad days. Part of the process. I really like I make it seem as it's like a life or death choice. Even small tasks like going to the gym, I say, okay, I put it really high in my priority list, and that's what really allows me to fulfill it sometimes. Obviously, if I feel ill, I wouldn't train. But sometimes I think it's important to really set your goals really high up in your priority things,
Yeah.
in your priority list.
Again, with the I had a podcast recently with someone about weightlifting, and he was telling me about during some of his lifts. That sort of a really great thing to do is to sort of imagine sort of a worst case scenario. If I don't lift this, then I'm dead. And there's comes such a high motivation along with that thought. Obviously, it's hypothetical, and every you obviously suspending disbelief to do it. But I think that almost putting that mindset into your daily life can be beneficial, because sometimes you don't want to move yourself because you don't see any real reason to. You most of the time people don't have to do that thing today. They can do it tomorrow. But the issue of always putting it
Yeah.
off is, as we said, is that tomorrow never comes. So to almost give yourself an ultimatum sometimes can be a great way of getting your ass into gear, some might say.
Yeah, exactly. But I would I really feel identified with what you just said. But I think that it also depends on the person,
Yes.
because there are some people that, like, let's use the example of a coach. There's some coaches that when they are really hard on you, they bring the best out of you. But some people are simply not like that. Some people, when someone is hard on them, they just don't want to do it anymore. So you really have to identify what kind of person are you, and motivate yourself accordingly. You know, I'm the kind of person that I work better with pressure, but I know people that they don't work well with pressure. They're better being on a calm, like, state, being on a, like, having a calm environment, and that's how they perform better. So it really depends on the person.
That's great. So you can kind of learn how to experiment with yourself by seeing, okay, well, I know I need to motivate myself, but let's see what kind of motivation works for me, because I suppose that's not always as self-evident as people might think.
Exactly, and that brings us to the point of, again, of, like, getting to know yourself. The only way you're gonna know what works best for you is by trying it and seeing how you adapt to it. That's the only way. Nobody's gonna tell you what works best for you, only you.
Do you have any role models who have sort of helped you throughout either knowing yourself better or just kind of bettering yourself in general?
Role models. I don't know why, but I'm the kind of person that the only people that I admire are people that are, like, either my family or people that I know, like, quite dearly. But I don't have, like, role models, like, let's say, like, someone like someone famous, that I
Hmm.
aspire to be. If I would have to pick one person that I would really like to know, but not be exactly like that person, that probably would be, like, doing the Rock Johnson. But I feel that I try to take the best things from many people, you know. And I think that that's what really has helped me.
Yeah, I mean, you have that ability, right? We can all pick a mix. We know that everyone has their own faults and mistakes, and it'd be silly to think that, people don't know the lives of celebrities, for example, so you don't actually know what they're going through. So to sort of put them on a pedestal isn't great, but yeah, to pick out the best parts of them, or pick out the best parts of your friends and family and learn how to use those parts to your advantage is obviously a great thing.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that.
So how do you think people can stay motivated stay productive during the quarantine? I mean, people have work to do still. People maybe have projects that they're not fulfilling. Was this go back to your point about just taking action?
Yes, definitely. Just set yourself a menial task, something that you have to do at the start of each day, and build it up accordingly. So you can start with like making your bed, or I don't know, like reading like some pages of your favorite book, or watching a YouTube video, maybe watching like a motivational video. But just take action on that first task, and you'll see how little by little your inner motivation will build up, and that will motivate you to go on to the next task and the next task. But I think it's really important to set out what you need to do, and not just have it in your brain.
Well, what's your opinion on if someone sort of has that idea in their brain, they start acting on it, and then they fail? I mean, that happens to a lot of us too, and I'm sure it's happened to you. So when things don't exactly go your way in those situations, what kind of advice would you say is good there?
That remember that in order to succeed, you have to fail. Like if you look at it from kind of like an objective point of view, the more you fail, the closer you are to getting to your goal. And also, failure doesn't have to be permanent. It's just part of the ride. If you stop, like if you go past the failure avenue, why would you stop there? You have to go on and move forward.
I've heard that some of the best basketball players, for example, have had some of the most fails in history, but they're all private. They're all behind closed doors and they're practicing on their own. To be the best at something, you're probably going to fail a lot of times to get there.
Yeah, exactly. For instance, like Kobe Bryant, like rest in peace. I believe he was the NBA player that failed the most shots on the rim. So, and he's like by many one of the best basketball players to ever grace the earth. So that helps, like stuff like that helps you put things into perspective. That failure is part of your journey towards success. So you have to embrace it. It doesn't have to be negative. Like if something happens to you or if you fail and you don't gain anything out of it, then I would say yeah, it's utter failure. But if you gain even the tiniest bit of lesson from it, then you're much better than when you started.
Brilliant. Yeah. And just lastly now, Carlo, I do want to bring it to another piece of advice which you might have is I'm trying to really milk you for all the knowledge I can in this podcast. So, again, you've had a few different part-time jobs at the same time, which is really overwhelming talking to you about the amount of stuff that you've done. You've been waking up early. You've been managing all kinds of pages which have God knows how many followers. What would you say, and as well as moving country at such a young age and living in a different country, what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned through all of this?
The biggest thing that I've learned, the fact that the only boundaries, boundaries are only set by you and only you. Like I think that if you, even if it sounds cliche, I don't care. Like if you believe it, I think, and if you work systematically and also like in a smart way towards it, you will achieve it sooner or later. But just don't give up, because as I said earlier, like failure is part of the journey, if you're going past the failure avenue and you fail and you stop, like, why would you stop there and quit, and leave your car and get out? You have to just keep on driving, keep on moving forward, and eventually something will conspire, something will help you. Or you will find something out that will help you towards achieving your success.
What a great statement to end on, I'll tell you. Now, yeah, so I just want to thank you, Carlo, for being part of the podcast. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people now who feel incredibly motivated to get on things which perhaps they've been procrastinating for a lot of time. Just take action, look at your environment, look at the habits, look at the responsibility you can take, see what motivation works for you. I think a lot of bases are being covered in this podcast, and I want to thank you for your time and for bringing up these things which might not be the first thought for some people.
Oh, no, thank you so much, Ben, for being a wonderful friend and for having me here. That I think really highly of you. Yeah, I hope that there will be a time soon in the future that we can meet up again.
I'm hoping so too. I think that day will come soon. When you get your ass back over to the UK, we're gonna dance the night away, my friend.
I'm sure of it.
Thanks very much, man. Cheers.
No, thank you. Take care. Bye.